All right, exciting week as we begin Big Sky play. I know it's a good situation that we're in, going through the non-conference season and getting 4 Division I wins. I think we're about a month removed from that first game, and I do think we've made significant progress. Got a lot of guys in the games the last three times out, and I think that group has continued to improve. And I think our top group on both sides of the ball have really played quite well. You think about what our defense has done really since halftime of that New Mexico game. There hasn't been a lot that's been given up. We haven't taken the ball away, which I hope will come, but I think we've played really sound on the defensive side, and then offensively, I think we've been a fairly balanced outfit when we've intended to be, but we've still been able to run the football effectively. And all that being said, we haven't had to tax Tommy a whole lot. I think he's under 25 carries right now, and not that he won't carry the ball, but that was intentional as we went through the non-conference season. We remain a pretty healthy team at the same time, and anytime you have 4 games under your belt, that's not always the case. So, continuing to develop our depth and stay healthy is certainly a great place to be. As we head into conference play, an opportunity to go on the road here to play Idaho State, a team we haven't faced in a couple years, a place that no one on our team has played. So it'll be a new environment. Against really a new team. The last time they were up here, Coach Regal was the coach. We haven't faced a Cody Hawkins-led Idaho State team. So, I think they're a team that's certainly emerging. It was a big win for them last Saturday, beating Southern Utah. A team that had a couple impressive games under their belt coming into that game. Offensively, they can be very explosive. Averaging just under 280 passing. I know rushing wise, those rushing numbers ticked up this last week. Now they're about 140 rushing, so I think they can get you both ways there. They're scoring, right around 32 points a game at the same time. And then defensively, a 3-3-5 defense that to me seems very principled. I know they've numbers wise right now, points per game, I guess probably isn't where they want it to be. I know that North Dakota game in particular got away from them, and there was a lot of reasons for that. But they I think up front with Horton and George, I think in particular in their front, that's where it starts for them. I think 5 and 3 sacks respectively. And then you look at their linebackers and safeties, really aggressive group that can tackle the football. That can move around really well, and I think they found their footing a little bit on Saturday against Southern Utah defensively. So it'll be a big challenge. Again, going down there, outside of Coach Daly, Coach Owens, having played there, we're pretty unfamiliar with Holt Arena and the setting there. So look forward to it. Big week ahead of us, and excited for the opportunity. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
A little bit with the offense for Idaho State, just the fact they've used a couple different quarterbacks. I guess what you kind of seen from that air raid attack.
Yeah, I think combination. I know they've played 4 guys. It seems like they've settled in at Tracy being their main guy, with rolling Hayes in to not only give a change of pace, but he's a guy that can run the most effectively. I think scored a couple touchdowns this past game, but then he's also thrown the ball all right to this point too. And I know we saw Tracy a little bit last year. He played the second half when we played Utah Tech, but he's a good passer, and he's got good weapons to throw to, and it's apparent that when they have protection and he can get the ball out, they got guys that can make the plays on the other end too. So and then they found a little balance in the run game this past week, and I know they've been running 3 different running backs out there at the same time. So offensively, they make you cover the whole field. I think they certainly make you cover the width of the field with screen game, quick passing game, but then they also have some guys they can throw the ball down field to too. So we'll have to be on it defensively, and ideally we can get some some pressure on, we can get him again in passing situations. But it takes a lot to be able to dictate those terms, and we got to get to that point.
I think at the end of the last game, you said you guys got out of Mercyhurst relatively unscathed. I guess any injury updates into this one?
Yeah, I would say that's the case. I know out of any game, there's going to be a few lasting effects, but as we see here Monday, nothing changes depth chart wise based on any guys we know that are going to be out for the week. And I think at the same time, getting guys back right now, John Johnson's probably the one that we'll have to see how the next couple days play out. I know we are getting closer. Drew Polidor, Julius Davis, we're both out doing individual today. They're not going to play this week, but we are getting closer with both those guys as well. So I know Blake Stillwell is having surgery this week, and so likely out for the season. So to have him and Brock Steele out right now, that's created some challenges in that really deep safety nickel room. So how that continues to work itself out, I think the continued emergence of Taki Lulakepa and Taden Gray in particular. Tyson Pottinger, is a seasoned vet that's been out there a lot. So we're doing okay, but yeah, that's about as good an update as I can give.
Stillwell has a leg injury, is that right?
Yeah, yep. Yeah, I was on the touchdown at the tail end of that game, that main game. So.
Anything on the film that stood out from this last one that you didn't notice maybe quite as much on game day?
Well, I think the struggle that we had just a little bit offensively with some of the things they were doing. We missed a few plays here and there, in particular the 3-and-out that we had. They made a good play that first drive. Down in the red zone, a couple good plays, but I didn't mind that. I think we had to work for it a little bit more. I thought we did. I thought both Burke and JT going in there for the first time, while not perfect, I think they both did a good job. It was good to see us function the way we did in that 2-minute drive. But we left some things out there, I think, in the down the field passing game, which we're gonna have to make some of those plays as we move through. I thought defensively, you look at the time of possession that second half, they had an 18-play and a 15-play drive, but I think those two groups, and I'm saying two groups, it was really our twos, and then by and large our threes really battled, and ultimately out of those groups, I mean, there's going to have to be guys that are called upon as this season goes along. So, pleased with that improvement. I think special teams wise, we continued to do well in the punt block return outfit, getting a block, but then also, I think Taco did a good job of just getting some yards back. We were 10 plus per return again. That's exceptional. And, the block was a play that was executed to perfection. And it wasn't Ryland, it was Neil Daly, it was Bryce Grebe and Zach Cruz interior-wise doing their jobs that ultimately sprung Ryland. So excited about a lot of things in that game. I think it's progress in the progress that we wanted to see out of that opportunity.
Andrew Paljo, obviously he started the last few games, but also got a lot of playing time last year. I guess what have you seen from his growth over the last year?
Yeah, Andrew Powdrell is a guy that isn't young anymore. I think first and foremost, he's got a lot of game experience behind him. Extremely aggressive football player, and I think he flashes in that regard quite a bit. He's a guy that, when tackling as a corner, he can really be a force. I know he's a guy we can blitz. He did miss a sack, but I think he's a guy that we can do that with. I think he can match up well. He gives up some height, but that number 2 for Mercyhurst was a big guy, and he went toe-to-toe with him and defended, I know, one ball in particular. So, really pleased with his continued growth. And I think anytime a young guy plays like he did last year, you just assume this level of maturity. And, I think that's been the biggest thing for Andrew is just continuing to grow up. And that's for all those young guys and not assuming anything and continuing to really hone in on his craft. And I think that's where he is as we stand here four games into it. And, certainly a guy that, we'll get John back, but is worthy of rolling with those two seniors, John and Simeon.
I guess speaking of that, just having a young guy, just having all that playing experience last year, being able to step into these bigger games, into that starting role, that makes sense.
Yeah, he's fearless. I know first and foremost, and he was fearless last year, and that's what allowed him to play as a true freshman. But you take that fearless nature, his talent, and then you throw experience on top of it. You have a guy that, while really young, can go out there and perform in intense moments, and he can also, you play that position of corner, it's not always going to go your way. You're going to give up some things here and there, but his ability to move on and bounce back, I think that's maybe one thing with time under his belt that I think continues to improve. He's so competitive, he thinks he can make every play, should make every play, and sometimes you got to work through that a little bit, and I think Andrew certainly is doing a better job of that, and we need him to perform at a real high level throughout this season. I think he has to this point.
What stands out about Idaho State offensively?
Well, I think just their ability to again make you defend the whole field, and the quarterback thing, you could tell through those first couple games was a challenge. Anytime, they literally played 4 guys through the first couple games at quarterback, and now that they maybe settled into a little bit more of a rhythm with the 2, they put a lot out there for you to have to be concerned about, and it's not just concerned about, hey, they got all this scheme, they got guys that can make plays. I think their receiver group and their size at receiver, I think is really something that we're gonna have to do a good job with. Matching up against Weimer number 6 and Frederickson 15. I think those 2 guys, their ability to make the 50-50 play has been there these first 4 games, and we're going to have to do a really good job of defending the pass, and that comes front and back for us. So it's the guys in the back end being able to cover, but it's our guys up front being able to put pressure on. So hopefully, again, we can get them into those situations, and part of that does start with limiting their run game too. I know them getting that run game going in this past game was significant for them. I think their ability to do it, and some of it was you're chasing points a little bit in some of those games, between the North Dakota game and maybe the Oregon State game a little bit, but ideally we can make them one-dimensional, and ideally we can do what we do in those situations, which is put pressure on and cover down the field.
How do you attempt to prepare or recreate the environment that could be inside that dome?
Well, a little bit's imagination, I suppose. We're not going to go down there and practice. It's not the same. I suppose it's got some similarities to the other 2 domes that you're playing in this league, between the Kibbe Dome and the Northern Arizona Sky Dome. But I don't think there's anything we can do to replicate it here. I know we'll get a chance to get out there before the game and get the feels. I know they had a decent crowd there for homecoming last weekend, so I suspect there'll be a decent crowd again. I think Coach Daly, Coach Owens, I think can speak to their experience a little bit down there, but ultimately, playing in a dome, you got to assume that noise can be more of a factor. Okay, so we'll work through the noise piece a little bit for sure. I know the elements are eliminated, so that part is I suppose a positive. But for us, we just got to still make it about the game between the lines, and new environment, so be it. Go out there and do the best we can to tackle it.
How much does preparing for other 3-5 defenses in the past, how much does that kind of inform you how you guys are preparing for this 3-3?
Well, you know what? I think they're all maybe a little bit different. They all got their own little nuance. Theirs would be more out of this Iowa State, family that's been born the last 5 years versus the New Mexico, San Diego State, that kind of deal. So, I think we got to be able to identify fronts first and foremost, and then you have to understand the the alignment of the linebackers. So in the run structure, or relative for the run structure, I think that's definitely where it starts. So we have some carryover, I suppose, but Idaho State's going to line up in a different manner, than New Mexico did, I guess. And then I think structurally on the back end, how does that fit for them? And then what does that mean pressure-wise? I think they're all, again, their own version of it. And I do think they're very principled. I do think what they do, they are not grab-baking whatsoever. This is a defense that knows what they're doing, how they want to do it, how they want to attack you. And it's to this point, I think it's been a very aggressive one in nature. And I know the last two teams that they've faced are, I think, run-first teams. So at a minimum, we can, I think, look at these last two games in particular and probably be able to glean something from how they've chose to defend them. Looking forward to the challenge for sure, but they've done some impressive things to this point.
I guess just any impressions you've had of Cody Hawkins, just kind of from afar, and just what he's done for this program.
Well, certainly have a lot of respect for his dad, first and foremost, and Hawk is helping him out now, so I think we got to take that into account. I know Cody was coordinating the last time Davis was here, and he's definitely injected a brand, a philosophy, a work ethic into this program that they've been through a lot. I know I've been coaching now 4 years, and this is the third coach that we've faced. I think when you say that means there's been a lot of turnover. So I've been impressed with the stability he's brought about. Certainly bringing in a philosophy, a way of doing things, a belief. I think that's what's apparent. You come in with the right mindset, kids start believing, and that's what you see beyond the schemes they're running. They got a team that's playing really hard and believing, and you got some talent along with that. That's dangerous.
First or second trip to Idaho in your career, but first one to East Idaho, into Pocatello's of your career. How excited are some of those guys who are from Idaho, and especially that area, to play?
No, I think it's a big deal. Titan in particular. Logan, I know for him up the road, brother playing on the other side. Javante King, is right up the road. So, that's been a good little stretch for us to recruit. And we're going to continue. It's not that far from here. I know we got a good little number from the Boise area as well. So, for them to represent, their state while wearing Montana State colors is important for us to do everything we can for them. Come this Saturday, I'm sure they'll have a strong following. Those guys that are local to the area, and excited for them to be able to play in their backyard.
Coulter, do you have anything?
Yeah, sure, hey, Coach. You mentioned that some of the statistical stuff from Idaho State things. How much do you gauge or weigh into statistics when it is during the non-conference and you have so many sort of varying opponents, whether they're like opponents, not unlike opponents? I guess what I'm asking is the statistics a valid measure going into conference play?
Well, I think when you're trying to take non-conference stats and pour them into this conference comparison, no. I think that's for sure not. But when you're trying to analyze an opponent, I think you have to look at some of the things. Certainly, how do those games play out? And that's where I know that North Dakota game, that got away from them in a hurry. It was short fields. It was a pick six. So offensively, I think that changed them in a hurry. And defensively, I think their mode was different. On the flip side, they get ahead against Southern Utah, and it's a different gauge. So you maybe pour those two games together, it maybe gleans something. But you certainly have to look at both of them, for what they were. And I think statistically, they hung around against Oregon State, and then they play a Western Oregon team. So no, I think to say this is this perfect read of them, I don't think that's accurate, but I do think there's a team that has had some really good moments of football 4 games in, and I think they certainly want to throw the football. You know, that's part of their throwing. However you say it, Idahoans or whatever. But you know, I think the fact that they got a little run game going this past game, it was evident listening to Coach Hawkins that was important for them. So, you know, we're going to have to defend the pass for sure, but we are going to have to limit the run game. And then I think defensively, you know, looking at their statistics, yes, you have to really dig into, okay, what are these other teams trying to do? And I know these past 2 teams in particular are run heavy teams. And I suppose you could look at us the same way to some degree. So try to slice it up the best you can, but you know, stats at this point are a brief piece to what we really dig into.
You mentioned the dome factor. There's like more domes in the Big Sky in the Missouri Valley than most other places in college football. Do you like playing in domes, or what is your opinion of dome football?
That's a good question. Coached in the dome for a long time, and I think as a coach, you certainly, as an offensive coach, I think one thing you could always bank on, it was going to be 7 degrees and no wind. Defensively, I know going back to those days, I think we could count on that we were going to have a distinct advantage with the noise. So going on the road in those environments, you know, I think, okay, offensively, can we take advantage of the fact that we know the elements are not going to be a part of it? Absolutely. But on the flip side, do we have to contend with noise that can be generated by a crowd that might not match numbers-wise what that would take outside? Absolutely. I remember a couple times down to, you know, the Dakota Dome in Vermillion, or, you know, going over the Kibbe Dome last year, where, you know, a crowd doesn't have to be too massive to create issues noise-wise. So we got to take that into account, you know, and I think it's just a different setting in general. I know these domes that don't have seats in the end, you have a wall. It's just different. It's a different backdrop. It's a different setting. So I think there's just some getting used to. You know, do I like it? I guess whatever. I mean, we're sitting here in September. I know it's going to be 80 here this week. I don't know if I like going down and playing inside when you know it would be that nice out, but it's where the game's being played, so we'll go down there and play it.
The last time you guys played Idaho State, it was sort of an interesting game, but you were able to really control it, even though it was sort of an interesting game. I remember Sean was kind of banged up. I think Tommy was out. What do you remember about that afternoon 2 years ago?
Well, I remember the first thing, Coach Regal was in the hospital.
Right.
You know, how strange was that? And, you know, yeah, we were able to ultimately take control by halftime, but it wasn't this perfect deal. I remember we scored real quick back to back before the half. We had a bunch of explosive stuff happen in that game, you know, but the biggest thing that stood out is, you know, here's a team coming over here with a first-year head coach that didn't have their head coach. And you know, you talk about, I suppose, being pretty disjointed, and even where they would have been at in the course of them developing, you know, his program, I guess. So I think they're in a lot different place, a lot more stable place, a place of you know, like I said, a lot more belief right now, confidence. They're playing hard. So yeah, putting much stock in anything that last time they were over here. I know there's some same players. There certainly are, you know, but by and large, that seems like a long time ago. And as far as us putting anything into that, it's very little.
I know you probably only looked at Idaho State so far, but do you have any gauge on the league in general, Big Sky Conference going into league play?
Yeah, I think it's. I think the teams that we probably thought that are going to be near the top are probably going to be near the top. I do think there's teams that are making a move though, and non-conference maybe doesn't indicate that there's this level of consistency struck either by anybody maybe. I think your schedule in the non-conference is certainly an indicator. How much you were challenged is difficult. I look at our schedule. We were supposed to have a Stephen F. Austin team coming here who, as recent as 21, was a playoff team. I think when we scheduled that, or that was scheduled before that. A main team out of the CAA coming over here who had been a playoff team not too far down the road, but I think we lost the one game. The other team is on, it's on the way up. So you can only control what you control. You play the teams you play. I do think, the second half and how we had to work through things against New Mexico, I think was a great experience for us. But I know I got off track there, but I think the non-conference just is this initial barometer, and now it's that week in, week out. How can teams do what they need to do to get better? Who can be consistent, who can keep improving, who can stay healthy to some degree, and that's really what we're after, regardless of how the teams line up for us. And I do think it's a schedule within this league, though. You better be ready every week, because you don't know how a team is going to show up. You got to expect their best. I know that much.
I was also thinking about the last time Montana State played there, 2018. Bobcats lost, but then they won 4 in a row down the stretch, get in the playoffs, and since then the trajectory of the program has just been like this. You've had double-digit wins every year, basically, and playoffs every year. So I know that you've been a part of that in the last 4 years, but what do you just think of the general trajectory of the program over the last 6?
Well, I know there was that was not a good game from what I've heard. There was some turnover, staffing wise, that had occurred. That is one thing I do remember. When the first time we played Idaho State in 21, those captains talking about that game down there, and how disappointing it was, to be a part of. So I hope what's happened, maybe since the middle part of that year is, our expectations have continued to rise. And along with that, our level of consistency and understanding what we need to do to meet those expectations has become what our kids are about. And I think we're in a position where it's a fair chance we're going to get everybody's best shot. So I'm pleased with our trajectory, I guess. I feel like we have a ways to go yet. We haven't ultimately accomplished what we want to accomplish, but I think what we have in front of us this year, I think is just a team that, if we can find a way to get better each week, if we can find a way to, by and large, show up with the same mindset, effort, that we're going to put ourselves a chance to win and be there in the fourth quarter, and that's what you need to be about. And I don't know that, maybe going back to the middle of 18, that's exactly where this program is at.
And also just do a little something on Bryce Greedy, because I feel like he's really come along. The transition from going from 6-man football to now making plays on Saturdays in Division I, that seems like a pretty big learning curve for a guy, but he seems to be doing it pretty well for a redshirt freshman.
He does, yeah. And I think what goes into that, Bryce is blessed with a lot of ability, first and foremost. He has a tremendous work ethic, and I think having his brothers lead to kind of follow, just from hey, here's how you need to do things. I did this, so you can do this. I'm sure, I think that's probably, Brody being able to allow Bryce to feel that way and then push him all at the same time. And, I think he's a smart kid, that his instincts were always there. Those instincts showed up to me on the 6-man field as he's playing, what essentially was a linebacker position, but he's all over the place, and the ball is in his hands so much on the offensive side. And again, you have to still be able to make plays and see things and do all that. So, he's had, a transition that I suppose we would have hoped for, but I do think it's all happened maybe a little faster, going back to his recruitment. But I think as we got him here last year and had him around in the fall, I think this was our expectation for Bryce this season, was to be a guy that could make an impact.